Fight fans, welcome to the PBC podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome everyone to the PBC podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thanks as always for joining us for yet another episode. Great to be here with Mike. And in case you haven't noticed, it's truly the summer of PBC. We're just the fortunate ones who get to talk about all of these great fights. Certainly had a lot of them over the weekend. We'll be going over it all, of course, and more great fights to come. So to that end, we've got one of the rising stars of the sport, the interim WBA 130-pound champion, Chris "Primetime" Colbert is going to drop in as well. He's going to be discussing, obviously, his fight Saturday night on Showtime versus Tugstogt Nyambayar. We'll get into that card, too. And in today's toe-to-toe segment, we're going to name our top 10 welterweights of the past 30 years. Boy, that one was really, really tough. So plenty to unpack this week. Without further ado, let's jump right into the PBC Fight of the Week. This Saturday, July 3rd, we're expecting some early Independence Day fireworks as unbeaten rising star Chris "Primetime" Colbert defends his WBA interim 130-pound belt against former world title challenger Tugstogt Nyambayar. That's going down at the Dignity Health Sports Park, aka the War Grounds in Carson, California. Of course, live on Showtime beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Mike, let's start with the essentials.
Okay, here we go. Colbert's 15-0, 6 knockouts. Nyambayar 12-1, 9 KOs. Obviously, Colbert's 5-0 in his last 5. He's got 3 KOs. Nyambayar 4-1 with 1 KO. Colbert was last in the ring in December. He stopped Jaime Arboleda in the 11th round. Nyambayar defeated Bouhairie by a split decision last September. Colbert has a 40% knockout ratio. Nyambayar 69%. Colbert 93 rounds in his professional career. Nyambayar 74. Colbert's 24. Nyambayar 29. Colbert turned pro 2015, as did Nyambayar. Colbert's fights from an orthodox stance. Nyambayar is a southpaw. Colbert's 5'8", Nyambayar 5'7". Big reach advantage for Colbert, 71 inches to 67. Colbert is from Brooklyn, New York, and Nyambayar lives in LA by way of Mongolia.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't realize that Nyambayar has fought 20 less professional rounds than Colbert. I believe he's 3 years older, according to those stats. Of course, he's got a wealth of amateur experience. They both do, but Nyambayar won the silver at the 2012 Olympics. I mean, this is an excellent matchup, which nearly everyone can attest to. But let's get into why, starting with the fighters. Mike, what are your thoughts on Colbert?
You know, I love the guy. He's a thoroughbred, which is a word I like to use for the best fighters in the world. He has speed. He's got skills. He's smart in there. He's got poise, especially for his age.
Yeah.
He doesn't have, big time, punching power comparable to, say, Jaron Ennis, but he has heavy hands and he's capable of stopping people. He showed that against Arboleda. That was actually a pretty brutal knockout in the end.
Yeah, sure
I think this guy's got star written all over him. It's just a matter of time with him.
Yeah, it sure seems that way, especially following that performance against, Arboleda. And Colbert has been outstanding thus far. He's quietly amassing an excellent resume. Jezreel Corrales, Arboleda, who we just mentioned, and now Nyambayar. I mean, we've seen him box. We've seen him brawl. He can fight on the inside, the outside, going forward, backward, lefty or righty. He seems to have all the tools. What about Nyambayar?
Well, I went back and watched a couple of clips of him, to prepare for this, and it reminded me how good this guy is. He's a really good fighter. He's probably better than the current version of Yuriorkis Gamboa, who was the original opponent, opponent for for Colbert.
Right.
So basically, as fans, I think we got a better fight.
Yeah.
He won a silver medal in the 2012 Olympics, as you said, for Mongolia. So he's got a good, foundation in terms of fundamentals. He can box. He's pretty athletic, and he's got heavy hands too.
Yeah.
He lost the decision to Gary Russell Jr. in his only title shot. There's no shame there. Nobody beats Gary Russell Jr. except Lomachenko. But he also struggled a little bit against Kobe Abridi. As I mentioned, that was a split decision in his last fight. He put him down in each of the first 2 rounds, and then it was kind of an even fight after that, which was maybe a little bit surprising. Maybe Brady's just a really good fighter, and it was a learning experience for Nyambayar. I was a little surprised by that. I still think he's really good, but I'm curious to see how he does in this fight.
Yeah, it's another big step up for him. But as you said, we've seen him against the best in Gary Russell Jr. He's a young veteran in his prime. He's got good wins. I mean, Oscar Escandón and Claudio Marrero. He's a tall boxer, puncher, has good pop, solid beard. Mike, what does a win mean for either fighter?
Well, one could argue, as I suggested, this could be Colbert's biggest test, which is strange because Nyambayar was a late replacement again. And how often do you even say that? It's very rare. Colbert is building his resume, building toward a title shot. A victory in this fight would be a solid step in that direction. So that's basically what he gets out of it. For Nyambayar, an upset in this fight would be huge. It'd be monumental. It would be his biggest victory and put him in a strong position to fight for a title again as soon as his next fight. So I mean, for him, it's absolutely huge. But for Colbert, it's just like, continue the upward climb.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you brought up the fact that Nyambayar was a short notice opponent. He was brought in late. Who does that favor?
It's weird. Originally, I thought maybe Nyambayar, but no, I think it probably favors Colbert. He had a full camp to prepare for a fight on this date. Nyambayar didn't, as far as I understand it. I know he was scheduled to face a different guy with a different style, but I think Colbert and his camp will have made the necessary adjustments. Nyambayar doesn't have anything to lose in a way, taking the fight on less than 2 weeks' notice. It's like he's just giving it a shot. So in that sense, maybe the pressure is a little bit more on Colbert.
Yeah,
I just think it's hard to prepare to face a guy like Colbert in less than 2 weeks. That's like almost like mission impossible.
Yeah, but from our side, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a tough fight for Colbert and a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Style-wise, how do you expect the fight to play out?
See, that's another thing. I think Nyambayar's style will suit Colbert better than Gamboa's would have. Gamboa would have moved and danced around, probably held a lot. It could have gotten kind of ugly. Nyambayar has good footwork and he's a good boxer, but he'll be there in front of Colbert. I think he's going to have all kinds of opportunities to counter Nyambayar. Colbert's style I don't think Colbert's style is good for anybody. He's a better boxer than pretty much anybody else. He can fight inside, as you mentioned, when he wants to, and then get out again. I think this is a big challenge from Nyambayar.
I assume you're going with Colbert then?
I don't know if I'd pick anybody to beat Colbert. Nyambayar is the farthest thing from a pushover, I want to say first. Again, he's an excellent boxer. He can hurt you. He's a tough out. The problem for him is similar to the problem that Mario Barrios had against Gervonta Davis. Barrios is a very, very good fighter, even better than I realized after watching him on Saturday. But Davis proved in the end that how special he is. He's a special fighter. I think we have a similar situation on Saturday. I'm picking Colbert by a late stoppage.
Nice. I mean, I think if Colbert is properly prepared like you, he's just awfully tough to beat. I mean, he's got a lot of tools in his arsenal, and I think he'll fight in whatever style is necessary to come out with the W. However, this is an extremely dangerous fight for him, really a 50-50 fight on paper, if we just put potential aside. So no outcome would surprise me, but I'm going to go with Colbert by unanimous decision. Now, not much has changed in the prediction league. I'm currently 23-2. Mike is 18-5-2. We're half year in, so we'll see what the next half brings. One quick note, the co-feature on this card is simply excellent. Undefeated lightweight contender Michel Rivera, also, Mike, one of my favorite young fighters. He takes on John Fernandez in a WBA 135-pound title eliminator. Great matchup of styles, great matchup period. Look, that fight could steal the show from the main event, but not if this man can help it. We've been talking about him for the past few minutes, but now we're looking forward to hearing what he has to say. The undefeated WBA interim super featherweight champion, Chris Primetime Colbert. Chris, first things first, Saturday night, big fight against Tugstogt Nyambayar. How excited are you to be back headlining on SHOWTIME?
I mean, SHOWTIME last time treated me amazing. I loved how they treated me, the promotion. After the fight, still, like, weeks after the fight, they still was posting me. So, I mean, it was a great opportunity to fight on SHOWTIME. I feel amazing to be back. This weekend, I just want to go out there and do what I do best, and that's keep showing the world that I'm a force to be reckoned with in the super featherweight division.
Now, your original opponent, Yuriorkis Gamboa, pulled out with a rib injury, and now you've got right. So you don't believe that he had an injury?
No. It's crazy because 2 days before he pulled out, because I'm training in Miami now. 2 days before, somebody called me and said he's in the gym doing sparring, only 3 rounds, dead tired, still super fat.
Wow.
So it's not looking good. And then 2 days after, he's calling. Now all of a sudden he got a rib injury. So it didn't add up to me, but it is what it is. They found a replacement, and the show must go on. It's still prime time on SHOWTIME.
So how did the fight with Nyambayar come about? They just presented it to you and said, hey, would you be interested in this guy?
I just told them, find me anybody. And they offered Tugstogt Nyambayar. I don't even know how his name is. Name. Tug. They offered Tug, and I didn't think twice. I just said, yeah, right away. Let's get it. I need an opponent.
Very good. What's your take on him as a fighter, Nyambayar?
I mean, I think he's a good fighter. He got skills. He's an Olympian, right? Olympic what? He got a medal?
Silver medalist, yeah.
Oh, Olympic silver medalist. But he ain't never fight prime time. I think I'm going to be too fast, too big, too strong. Him coming up in weight and then taking a fight on a week and a half notice, that's dangerous.
Right.
So,
still, in spite of that, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
But there's a difference between being in the gym and working.
Right.
He's probably been in the gym, but he haven't been working. So,
in spite of that, I think a lot of people feel Nyambayar is actually a better opponent than Gamboa. Would you agree with that?
I think he is a better opponent because he's younger and fresher. But skill-wise, he's a better opponent. But and because he's younger and fresher. But other than that, Gamboa would have been the better name, though.
Yeah, that makes sense. From your perspective, is it difficult to prepare for an opponent on such short notice? Because you had to shift also.
No, I don't do no shifting. Only shifting I do is in the ring when I'm throwing punches and switching angles.
Okay.
To be honest, I feel like they got similar type of styles. Like they both slick a little. They both got slickness to them. They both got a little bit of speed. Gamboa still got power, sneaky power. So I feel like it's the same thing. It's just another day for me. I mean, they gonna have the problem is for them adapting to me. I'm the trick here. I'm the puzzle they got to figure out.
You brought up being in Florida. We saw you. We seen the on IG and so forth. You training down there. So is this something recent, like a switch that you made recently, or?
Yeah. Me and Herman Caseta and my team, we went down. I mean, me and my team went down there to train at Herman Caseta's gym, Caseta Sports, because I knew about that gym for a while. I trained there when I was like 18, training sparring with Payano. And I like their work ethic, and I like how Herman pushes the fighters and put them in. He get them in shape. Despite which I've seen this weekend from his fighter, Jason Rosario, but Jason was in tremendous shape. He just wasn't there skill wise. It was a lot of things that he thought he could do, but he couldn't really do. So that's why I chose to go down there with Herman. I know his house is mine, he said so. And they treat me very well out there. So I decided to go out there and get away from the distractions in New York. I was looking to put on the chilling performance against Gamboa. I was ready. I was gonna knock him out.
I wouldn't doubt it. We we saw pics of you working with another terrific young fighter, Michelle Rivera, who's going to be on the other card. What can you tell us about Rivera?
Oh, he's a tremendous fighter. He's fast. He's strong. He's big. And he got smarts to his brain. Like, it would be one day I get him, the next day he'll come back with some new tricks to try to get me and make me push me and get me. So it's like, I think he's a very good fighter. He's definitely going to put on a dominating performance this coming Saturday. And me and him fighting to see who's going to steal a show.
Now, you guys sparred, you're saying. You think, though, that maybe there's a matchup between you two in the future that could go down in the ring professionally?
Yeah, maybe. It depends. I don't know. I mean, that's my guy. I like him, so yeah. I wouldn't fight him no time soon.
Chris, speaking of Florida, Erickson Lubin notched a big win last Saturday over Jason Rosario. I don't know if you or Lubin are ever connected in Florida, but what were your thoughts on that performance?
I'm 100% hammer time. Me and Erickson been Lubin since 2000. Me and Erickson Lubin been brothers since 2012. We both was on the Silver Glove. The Junior Olympic National, and me and him was the most two underdogs in that whole tournament, unknown fighters, and we both dominated the tournament. And ever since then, we connected. So, like, that's been my brother for a while. I knew he was gonna win the fight. I even told my Herman and them I thought he was gonna win the fight.
How'd they react to that?
They had their opinions. I got my opinion, but my opinion is not opinion. My opinion is facts. I state facts, and Erickson Lubin came out and did what he had to do and dominated.
Yes, yes, he did. In the main event, we saw a potential future opponent for you, Gervonta Tank Davis, stop Mario Barrios in a great fight. What were your thoughts on that bout?
I feel like it was a good fight, fan-wise, entertainment-wise. But to me, I think Mario Barrios is still green, and he got a lot to learn. He instead of grabbing, he calling him on to fight more when you getting hit with big shots. So, like, just by that, you could tell, like, he's still green. He got a lot to learn. Tank did his thing. Tank looked amazing, though. I take with my hat to him. I'm no hater. He definitely looked sharp. But I knew Tank got more than just what they say he got, which is power. I knew he got skills. He got reflexes. I knew he was a tremendous fighter, so.
Now, they're going to show the replay of that fight Saturday night prior to your own. You're the headliner, obviously. Do you feel that you and Tank is shaping up to be a potential super fight in the future?
For sure.
Now, with that in mind, what is it about primetime Colbert that separates him from guys like Tank and others in and around his division?
I'm primetime. When you say the name primetime, who you think about?
You and Dion.
Okay, and Deion Sanders is what? One of a kind.
That's right.
Okay, then.
There you go. So your last fight was in December, a brilliant TKO win over Jaime Arboleda. We saw you coming forward, being the aggressor, and you basically just beat him down. And you did it with skill and power. Do you tailor your fighting style depending on the opponent in front of you, or you just do your thing?
100%. It don't really go with the fighter. I tell you, I make a game plan in camp, and I tell you, I can expose my game plan. I have no problem with it because I already know what the deal is when I get in there. I'm a human adapter, so I'm ready for whatever they bring to the table. But I already know how the fight is going to go from round one to whenever it ends. I don't plan on having this fight go to the distance, so.
Very good. So this weekend you're fighting in an arena they call the War Grounds. Is there any extra pressure to deliver an action-packed fight against Nyambayar?
Oh no, I don't worry about what they call it with the fans. I just go in there and do what I like to do. But this fight, if he come to bang, I'm definitely gonna bring the war because I know he can't bang with me. So I'm gonna do it.
Sorry.
Say that again.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue what you're saying.
No, I just said I know he can't bang with me, so.
Well, you've sort of answered my next question. Maybe you can elaborate. So how do you see the fight against Nyambayar playing out? You said you're going to stop him, but how is that going to happen?
You being smart. The first couple rounds, me being smart, testing him out, see what he got. Not first couple rounds, first round or two, see what he got, test about his power. And then a little, like after the second round, start applying my pressure and start applying my power and show him that there's levels to this shit. You can't take a fight against a monster like myself in a week and a half notice and think you're going to move up and wait to fight me at that and think you're going to win.
That makes sense.
Now, Chris, I know you don't want to look too far ahead, but, if you win on Saturday, you're probably going to have one more fight this year. Are there a couple names you see yourself facing next?
I'll probably end up fighting my mandatory Xavier Martinez, maybe.
Wow. Yeah, we'd love that fight. You brought up an interesting point though earlier, where you said that Gamboa would have been a bigger name. You probably have one of the more underrated resumes when it comes to the younger fighters.
100%. But
in the sport, is it because you fought tough fighters who don't necessarily have a bigger name? And what's better in your opinion, fighting guys like that or fighting the big names who may not be as good?
To be honest, I definitely have the most underrated resume. I'm one of the most underrated fighters in the game, but I don't care. As long as Showtime keep calling me back to the headline and I'm getting paid what I deserve, they can keep underrating me. They can keep doubting me. I'm gonna keep doing what I do best, and that's showing up and showing out. But I'd rather fight the opponents that I'm fighting than fight these bums that these champions be fighting and getting credit for knocking them out. Because I'm learning from the fights. They're not learning from that. They don't learn nothing to go into a fight to fight somebody that really not coming to fight for real. Yeah. I'm learning every time I step foot in the ring.
Yeah, and I think actually with Nyambayar, it's another learning experience for you. In terms of he's despite the fact that he's not necessarily a big name, he's still a damn good fighter. From what we know. Now, in closing, you've got the interim title. Tank Davis has the full WA belt. I don't know if he's going to hold on to that or what he's planning to do, but how close do you think you are to getting a shot at that strap?
To be honest, I don't really pay attention to that. I don't really care. I mean, because at the end of the day, when you think about it, right, the belts don't make the fighter. The fighters make the belts. Because if we all boycott these belts and say, oh, we don't want to fight for belts, what is the sanctioning body going to do? Have nothing. So at the end of the day, the fighter makes the belts. So at the end of the day, as long as I'm making money and I'm fighting top opponents, I'm good. And I'm beating them, I'm good.
Well, we can't wait to see you back in the ring, man. I know I speaking for Mike and myself, we know what you got, and you're definitely one of our favorite fighters. So we're really looking forward to what you're going to do on Saturday night. Shoot, I think everybody is after what you did to Arboleda. So I'm wishing you all the best. Hope you get some rest up, and get ready for the Saturday night, and let's get you back on afterward.
Sure. Yes, sir.
He's colorful.
You look good, you feel good, and you're going to fight good.
He's cocky.
He's got the style, the swag.
He's a can't-miss talent. Chris Primetime Colbert takes center stage against Olympic medalist Tugstogt Nyambayar. Plus, we live the epic pay-per-view clash between Tank Davis and Mario Barrios. 2 championship main events, one powerful night on Showtime.
It's time for the week in review, and if you were a fight fan, it didn't get much better than last weekend. We're going to start with Saturday night's Showtime pay-per-view headliner, a battle between 2 undefeated 26-year-olds, Gervonta Tank Davis seeking a world title in the 3rd division versus 140-pound champion Mario El Azteca Barrios. A brilliant back and forth where Davis broke Barrios down, scored 2 knockdowns in the 8th, and then 2 more in the 11th that closed the show. Another stoppage win for him. But before we get to the fight itself, Mike, let's talk about the ambiance. I mean, a sellout crowd of 16,570 at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. I don't know how the energy played out on TV, but Mike, it was absolutely electric in there.
Yeah, it looked pretty. I watched it. I wasn't there. I watched it on TV. It looked pretty raucous on TV. It really did. I've really missed the crowds. I thought fight cards during the pandemic were interesting in that we could hear everything going on, including instructions from the corners. It was sort of something new, something different. But the intensity and the energy in the crowd from the crowd was missing, and it just didn't feel like boxing as I've known it for such a long time. It seemed like almost like televised or streamed sparring sessions to me, which is something the fighters have said to it. It actually felt like that to them. It's really great to have a complete version of boxing back.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was wondering what kind of effect the crowd had on the boxers now that they're back to fighting, full capacity. I mean, it was electric the last time I was in Atlanta, December 2019, when Tank stopped Yorioka's Gamboa, but it was even more amazing this time. The stars were out and the action delivered. Speaking of which, what were your thoughts on the fight itself?
Okay, I started out with 2 takeaways, but now I have 4 takeaways. Real quick. So 1, the fight was really compelling, even though they didn't throw a lot of punches, which I found really interesting. I thought it was a great fight. 2, Barrios surprised me, at least somewhat, with his performance. I knew he was good. And I didn't expect him to be bulldozed like right away. I just didn't expect him to fight Davis on even terms for 10 rounds, which is pretty much what he did. I had it 94-94 after 10 rounds. He's a better boxer than I thought. He used his height and reach well much of the fight, keeping Davis on the outside. And man, does he have balls. That was a courageous performance for him to last as long as he did. And he would have kept fighting if they would have let him. 3, it was decided by Davis's power, just like we thought it was going to be. The guy's just freaking amazing. And then 4, I did not agree with the scoring. I had it, as I said, I had it 94-94, even after 10. I have no idea how the judges had Davis winning by large margins. Even Mayweather and Davis thought they were losing the fight, or at the very worst, it was close.
Yeah, I don't think they thought they were losing. Perhaps Davis did, but I thought Mayweather was just telling Davis what Steve Farhad's unofficial scorecard was. I don't score fights upon first viewing. Haven't watched it since viewing it. I just sort of try to study the fight and look and see what's going on and figure out the scores later. You do still get a sense of who's winning and who's not. And I thought the 2 knockdowns in the 8th sort of pulled Davis ahead, but Barrios bounced right back in the 9th round. But I never felt that Davis wasn't in control. He's patient. He fought a real veteran type fight. He's got an incredible ring IQ. I mean, it's masterful to watch. I saw it against Santa Cruz and saw it again here. Should Davis be ranked as a pound for pounder?
Well, I have him in my top 15. He's got victories over Jose Pedraza, Liam Walsh, Leo Santa Cruz, and Barrios, which is an impressive run, especially for such a young guy. And he's doing it at different weights. As we pointed out last week, where we suggested this might happen, he's now won his last 3 fights have been in his last 3 victories have been at 3 different weights. Right. I think he's just doing special things that arguably make him a pound for pounder. That's sort of the stuff you look for when you're making pound for pound lists, guys who do special things, and he's doing special things.
Yeah, I think he's the very definition of a pound for pounder. He's been in my top 10, and I think he sort of solidified himself in the rankings, if not moved up even higher following this victory. What about star power? Where does Tank Davis rank in terms of that among his contemporaries?
Well, to me, that's more obvious than even his pound for pound status. He has that social media following. He packs arenas, and he brings, maybe as important as anything else, he brings an energy to the sport that not many guys do. It's kind of hard, to be honest. It's kind of hard for me to put my finger on it exactly. Maybe it's in part his association with Mayweather. Maybe that has something to do with it. But it's definitely there. There's something big there. The guy's already really big. If he can continue to stay focused and continue to win, this guy is just the absolute limit for this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I think I heard my neighbor told me earlier today, he watched the fight and we were chatting about it. And he was like, that guy's like Mike Tyson. And that's something I've been hearing a lot. And I think that although he isn't a heavyweight, that it's that power that he shows that people see and that, just captivates them, along with his boxing skill, along with everything else that he brings to the table. But it's that power that really stands out among everything else. What about Barrios? I mean, he gave a strong effort in there, Mike. Where does he go from here?
I think you can argue that he didn't really take a step backward in spite of the loss. He fought better than a lot of people thought he would. I thought he pushed Davis to the limit, and he showed the kind of fighting spirit that fans just love. I'm confident in saying that he's much bigger now than ever, even though he lost that fight, because of the performance that he gave on Saturday in front of such a large audience. So not only did he give a good performance, but it was in front of a huge crowd, huge audience. He just needs to heal up, get back to work, and wait for the opportunities, and I think they're going to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's definitely a bigger name because of Saturday night. Who would you like to see Tank face next?
You know, we could talk for an hour about this. I mean, there's the guy's fighting in 3 divisions. There's so many options that he has. I'm going to assume that he's going to fight either at 135 or 140 or somewhere in between. With him, who knows? He might fight at welterweight. I don't know whether the fight could be made, but I'd love to see him fight Ryan Garcia at 135. That would just be it's pretty obvious, but that would just be a huge fight.
Sure.
He's two really popular guys. The same with Teofimo Lopez, although I think he might end up fighting Lomachenko again and then move up to 140. Who knows? Maybe Tank, ends up fighting him at 140. I know we always throw Richard Comey's name out there, but how about Tank versus Comey? That would be really fun.
Yeah, that'd be explosive.
Devin Haney's another option, another top guy. And then at 140, maybe he shoots for a fight against Josh Taylor. I just imagine he gets that fight and wins. Suddenly he's the undisputed 140-pound champion. We're talking like superstardom if he does that. And again, I could just go on and on and on. Whoever he fights, people are going to want to watch.
Exactly. I mean, the possibilities are endless. Mayweather did say in the post-fight press conference that he's unlikely to remain at 140. That he's more than likely moving back down. And if that's the case, I really love the Ryan Garcia fight. I mean, that's the one I want to see. So I'm with you as far as that. I also love the Teofimo Lopez fight, although it looks like he's going to be tied up with opponents over the course of the next year or so. Gary Russell Jr. is a name I got to throw out there in case he wants to move up.
Yeah.
Isaac Cruz. I mean, and you said it, any opponent is going to be an event for Tank Davis, who notches another huge win. Now, in the co-feature, a WBC super welterweight world title eliminator, Erickson the Hammer Lubin, showed that he alone deserves a shot at the unification match, the winner of the unification match between Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano on July 17th. Lubin delivered 2 knockdowns in stopping former unified champion Jason Rosario in 6. Mike, give us your thoughts on the action.
It was a good fight. I thought Lubin looked really sharp, with the exception of that jab that seemed to hurt him in the 4th round. I thought he outboxed and outworked Rosario in the first 3 rounds, each of which I gave to Lubin. I gave round 4 to Rosario, and then round 5 was competitive, and then just boom, it was over. Lubin essentially ended the fight with that right to the body. That was painful to watch. Rosario never really recovered from that. So I thought it was pretty dramatic, entertaining stuff. I really enjoyed it. And I was really impressed with Lubin.
Yeah, it was a great performance from him. We saw what happened to Lubin when he did fight for a world title back in 2017 against the champion Jermell Charlo. He was stopped in 1 round. Can Lubin defeat the Charlo Castano winner?
I think he can. Now, whether he actually would is a question mark. I think as a matter of fact, I'm almost positive that the skill, the power, the confidence, it's all there. He's got all the tools ready to go, right? He showed that on Saturday night. I just wonder about his chin. Jermell Charlo took him out in 1 round, and I keep seeing that jab from Rosario that hurt him on Saturday. Maybe he wasn't as buzzed as it appeared. I don't know if he's commented on it, to be honest, but it looked like he was buzzed by a jab. Maybe he just got him just right. Bottom line for me, if Lubin can take his opponent's shots, which is a big if in my book, I think he can compete with anyone, and that includes Jermell Charlo.
Yeah, and he can defeat anyone if he can take. Well, that's
what shots. I mean.
Yeah. He did speak about it in post-fight presser, and he basically said it's boxing. I mean, you get hit, it happens, you get hurt. Look, he's an excellent boxer. You listen to the attributes. He's dedicated to his craft. Good power, good movement. He's got a great trainer in Kevin Cunningham. I think there's no question he's worlds better than he was in 2017. But Castaño and Charlo, doesn't matter. They're a rough night for any fighter, I think. But I'd love to see, I'd love to see Lubin get another world title shot. What about Rosario? What do you see in his future?
Man, I don't know. He sort of personifies the ups and downs in boxing, doesn't he? He was on top of the world when he stopped Julian Williams to win 3 154-pound titles, but he's been stopped in the 2 subsequent fights that he's had. Maybe he shouldn't have, hindsight's, it's easy for me to use hindsight. Maybe he shouldn't have jumped into a fight with a guy like Lubin after he was knocked out by Charlo, which we talked about last week.
Exactly.
How do you rebuild from back-to-back knockouts like that? I guess we'll really see how mentally tough this guy is in the long run, because it's going to take a lot of that for him to bounce back. I'm guessing he'll get more opportunities because of his name. He better win, though. I mean, he can't afford any more setbacks. I mean, otherwise he could end up being like a footnote in boxing history.
Yeah, and a lot of folks are going to be targeting his body now. Going forward.
Yeah,
sort
it looks
of the chink in his armor, right? I think he needs to work his way back up, rebuild, take a look at himself and see maybe why those body shots are affecting him. Does he need to go up to 160? Is he struggling to make weight? I'm not sure, but I don't think that he should jump back in against a high caliber opponent. But, who knows? Maybe I'm not in that camp and I'm not privy to whatever they know. Maybe they identify whatever it is that isn't working. Now, another 154-pound bout on the show featured Carlos Adames against Alexis Salazar. Lots of bad blood between the two heading into the fight, but this one didn't last long as Mr. Carlos notched the third round KO. Mike, what were your thoughts on the fight?
My takeaway is that I thought it was an example of a guy, Adames, who made the most of a big opportunity that popped up at the last minute. He wasn't even. This was a fill-in fight, right? He wasn't even supposed to be fighting, and he scores a dramatic knockout in front of a huge audience. I mean, that's really seizing the opportunity. That he just landed a left-handed bomb, didn't he? I thought it was a big step in the right direction after he lost a close decision to Patrick Teixeira and for an interim. Actually, it wasn't for an interim. Yeah, I guess it was for an interim title back in 2019. He's a player again at 154 pounds. Huge night for him.
Yeah, and it's a stacked division. Who would you like to see him face next?
I thought about that and couldn't come up with an individual. I just think he's earned the right to fight like a fringe or top 10 guy for sure. And he's probably a viable option for a top contender in search, of a compelling opponent. He's just in a really good position now. I think he's going to get a big fight in his next fight.
Yeah, and one name that came to mind was Luis Arias, who had just defeated Jared Hurd. I think be a nice fight between the two to see who sort of moves on to the next level toward a world title shot. But either way, as you said, he's right back in the mix now and a major player in a division full of players. Now, in the pay-per-view opener, Batsir Akhmedov scored a TKO win over former champion Argenis Mendez when Mendez didn't answer the bell for the 9th round due to a shoulder injury. Mike, I thought Akhmedov was in control up until that point. Is that how you saw it?
Oh, absolutely. It was a strong performance by Akhmedov. He reminded me why he gave Barrios trouble. He just keeps coming in a sort of a tight, methodical way. He really gradually, just like small step by small step by small step, broke down Mendez until he just didn't want anymore. He said that he injured his hand is the reason that he stopped fighting, but that might have been a way to try to save face. He was just done at that point. The fight wasn't as competitive as I had hoped, but I was really impressed with Akhmedov.
Yeah, I think he was the story of the night, and the fight fans in Atlanta really took to him. I mean, throughout the week and then during that fight, and it was an impressive performance. What's next for him?
I think he's a legitimate opponent for any top 140 pounder, including Davis, by the way.
Yeah.
I like a fight between him and, you know what popped into my head, and I really like this a lot, is a fight between him and Subriel Matias.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah,
that'd be a really good one.
Because they're both really fun to watch. That would just be a war. And another guy popped in my head. Would Adrian Broner be willing to fight Nyambayar? Anyway, it's a deep division. There's a lot of options for him, and he took a step up.
Yeah, for sure. He's probably wants the Barrios rematch. You mentioned Tank, of course, and I really like the Matias fight. Also, Robert Easter Jr. is another name that came to mind. But I mean, plenty of options for him in that division, which sort of seems to be sort of a recurring theme with all of these fights. But with that, we're going to take a quick break and then be right back to break down Sunday night's Fox PBC card.
Champions collide.
That powerful left hook.
Jermell Charlo bringing his 3 titles to the ring.
The young lion roaring tonight.
Brian Castano putting his championship belt on the line.
He has to rise to the occasion.
Who will become the undisputed champion of the world?
The best fighting the best.
History will be made. Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castano for the undisputed welterweight world title. Live on Showtime.
Fox PBC Fight Night returned on Sunday night, and in the main event, WBA regular 168-pound champion David Morrell Jr. made it look too easy. Morrell, undefeated 23-year-old Cuban, he needed only 1 round to defeat Mario Cazares. Couple powerful lefts in the first, dropped Cazares for good. Mike, how good is Morrell?
Well, he seems to have it all, doesn't he? I've sort of focused on his pedigree, on his amateur background, his skill set. He's just a really skillful, athletic guy. And then he does that to an opponent. He just destroyed that guy.
Yeah.
I just can't wait to see how this guy evolves at the next level. It looks to me like he's going to evolve into something very special.
Yeah, he's certainly a cut or two above the caliber of opponents he's facing now, and he's being fast-tracked. Who would you like to see him in the ring with next?
Well, you said he's being fast-tracked. He obviously is. I'm going to go back to my sort of conservative nature when it comes to pushing these guys. You don't want to go too fast. I'm looking at names right now as I'm doing this at 168 pounds. I'm looking at the ranked fighters. I see a guy like a Caleb Truax, or we were talking off the podcast. John Ryder maybe is a guy that he could fight. Anthony Durrell popped into my head. Maybe that's too big of a step for Morrell, but like you said, they're not wasting any time. So I don't know. I think he's really good, and he might be ready for a real contender. Got top guy.
Yeah, and I think they're going to get creative with it. You mentioned John Ryder, that fight's been discussed before. I think he's certainly ready for that. Karan Davis, who gave Durrell a hell of a fight earlier this year, might be a big name, but no doubt David Morrell Jr. is one to watch going forward. What a co-feature we saw on Sunday night, a battle for the ages. Undefeated cruiserweights, Efatober Apache and Brandon Glatton. I mean, they went to war for 10 rounds. Glatton scored a knockdown in the 6th, and in the end, that proved to be the difference as he won a split decision. So a huge win for him. Mike, we've had a lot of great fights in 2021 thus far, including Davis versus Barrios. Was this the fight of the year?
You watch these fights, and it's funny how sometimes that becomes obvious. That's exactly what I was thinking as I was watching that fight. Now, I don't know if it's the actual fight of the year or will be the actual fight of the year, but it was a hell of a lot of fun to watch. I'm watching that going, what the hell's going on here? These guys are just going after each other. They just traded bombs from the beginning to end. Defense be damned.
Right.
The most surprising thing about the fight to me is that it went the distance. I thought for sure somebody was going to get knocked out.
Me too.
But I thought it was why I'm a boxing fan. It was just really fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Glanton made a lot of fans. What are your thoughts on him? I mean, he was the underdog coming in, but watching him on Sunday night, what did us as fans and what did the odds makers miss?
Well, sometimes you need an opportunity to prove yourself. He's a tough, strong guy, obviously. He probably needs to do a little bit of work on defending himself better than he did. Those kind of fights can take a lot out of a fighter. You can't endure many of those. So I think he needs to focus on his defense a little bit. I know that for me, and now I'm very interested in seeing how he does going forward. And I think that's the idea. You want to collect fans. And like you said, I think he collected a lot of them on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both of them actually raised their stock a bit. A lot of people talking about how this fight deserves a rematch. Assuming that happens, who do you think wins?
If we did our predictions on this fight, I would refuse to predict anybody. I have no idea. It was just so close. I just want to see it again.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm with you. I think either way, I don't know who wins. I don't know who loses. Actually, I know who wins, and that's the fans.
Right.
If we get anything like what we saw on Sunday night. Now, in the Fox PBC Fight Night opener, undefeated 140-pound contender Omar Juarez suffered the first loss of his pro career, a 10-round majority decision to Al Rivera. This was another good scrap. Juarez was dropped in the 9th round, which proved to be the decision. Very, very close on the scorecards. Mike, what were your thoughts on the fight?
Well, in one word, surprising. I thought this was a reasonable step up in opposition for Juarez, and I still do. It just didn't work out for him. It was as you said, it was a hard-fought, entertaining fight that could have gone either way. The knockdown was the deciding factor. Turns out, at least from my perspective, that Rivera was just better than I realized. That was just a huge step up for him. It was a big night for him. Not a big night for Juarez, but I think he's going to be okay.
Yeah, and you know what? Yeah, Rivera certainly surprised because I thought Juarez looked good, made some mistakes. Honestly, I thought Juarez won the fight. But all credit to Rivera. Where does Juarez go from here?
As I said, I think he'll be fine. He fought well, just came up a little short. He's only 22 years old. He'll go back to the gym, work on some things, and I think come back stronger as a result of this fight. Maybe they take a small step back in terms of opposition to sort of rebuild his confidence, maybe get another W on his resume. But in the end, I think this guy still has a bright future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if he jumps right into the rematch. Again, I thought he won the fight, so
could be.
I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back in there, tinkers a few things and jumps right back in there with Rivera. Hopefully it'll be as good of a fight as we saw on Sunday night. All right, it's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. This week, we're going to name our top 10 welterweights of the past 30 years. It was a really fun exercise, and I'm kind of curious to see how our lists stack up. We're going to go in ascending order, of course, starting with number 10. So, Mr. Rosenthal, the floor is yours.
Okay, I just to preface this, I put quite a bit of time into this. Like I said, I really want to,
get it right.
You get it right to know what I'm doing here. So I put a lot of time and what I tried to do is I went through their records. I tried to determine how many fights they had at 147 pounds, and I was very, very strict. If they were 140 and a half, I counted that as a welterweight fight. So I was very, very strict about that. And then with some records, like guys in Mexico or something like that, a lot of times they don't have what the weight was. So I just did the best I could. So anyway, here we go. Number 10 might be a little bit surprising, but this is where he landed. Antonio Margarito. 24 fights at 147 pounds. He was, looks like I have the wrong record. I think he was 20-4 in those fights. I was surprised by some of the guys that he beat a lot of no-name guys early in his career, but I was surprised by some of the guys he beat later on. He beat Sergio Martinez. He handed Sergio Martinez his first loss at 47. Frankie Randall, Daniel Santos, Antonio Diaz, Six Heads Lewis, Kermit Cintron twice, Claudy, Miguel Cotto. That's a lot. Those are a lot of really good victories. Now he lost to Mosley after the alleged stuffed glove scandal. He lost to Paul Williams. He lost to two guys early in his career. But overall, I thought he was pretty dominating welterweight for a guy that didn't have a tremendous amount of skill.
Yeah, I like Antonio Margarito a lot, aside from obviously the glove controversy, which sort of tainted his career. But I think he was at welterweight longer than probably nearly everyone else on the list. He was at welterweight, I think, from the time he was 18 years old. He had that one fight at 154, I think, against Daniel Santos. But other than that, he pretty much remained in the division. And he had a lot of good wins. However, he did not make the cut for me. I thought he caught a lot of people at the right time, such as Sergio Martinez, who wasn't quite developed when he fought him. And but he did have the great win over Cotto. I liked the win over Claudy, but Claudy was relatively inexperienced and didn't, Claudy had that loss against Margarito too, sort of faded in the second half of most of his fights, and that's what happened when he fought Margarito. So my number 10 is an active fighter. You may have heard of him. His name is one time Keith Thurman. He makes my list at number 10. I think his two big wins against two candidates who, one of them at the very least, considered for the top 10 in Sean Porter, then of course Danny Garcia, and that was a big fight and an impressive win at the time that Thurman beat him, and so he makes the cut for me at number 10.
Okay, so I'll just tell you my number 9, which is Keith Thurman. Right. So
man, this is going to get interesting.
Yeah. So he had 14 fights at welterweight. He was 13-1. I know he's only had one loss, so it really wasn't that surprising. But he also beat a string of really good guys. He beat Jesus Soto Carras, is always a tough guy when he was near his best. Julio Diaz, good fighter. Leonard Bundu, Robert Guerrero, Luis Collazo, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Josecito Lopez. Pretty good list of victories for him in his only losses in his last fight to Pacquiao. So, yeah, I actually didn't. Obviously I knew he was a top welterweight, but I didn't realize he had that many top tier wins.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, folks forget how good Keith Thurman was, and sadly we haven't been able to see him fight as much as we'd like over the past couple years due to injuries and so forth. Let's move on to number 9, and I'll kick this one off starting with mine. This may come as a surprise to a lot of people, but after looking over his record at 147, and of course scoring his fights based on how I saw it, my number 9 is the golden boy, Oscar De La Hoya. Does have the win over Ike Corte at 147. I thought Corte won, but I'll concede that it was a close fight. Same with Pernell Whitaker. I thought Whitaker won that fight. But Oscar does have the win over Ober Carr, which was an excellent victory. For those who don't know, Carr was a terrific welterweight back then. And he does have on his record those wins against Corte and Whitaker, and that's why he places number 9 on my list.
Okay, so Oscar's higher up. I'll get to Oscar.
I'm sure.
Oscar in a bit. And I mentioned my 9, which is Keith Thurman. So we're on to number 8.
Okay. All right, so I'll go with number 8, and for me, it is none other than Desert Storm, Timothy Bradley, who at 147 holds wins over Jesse Vargas, Manny Pacquiao, Juan Manuel Marquez, one of the more underrated fighters, I feel, of the past 15 years or so, Mike.
Yeah, he's on my list too, so I'll give you my take when
it's time. All right, so
when he pops
who's
up.
your number 8?
My number 8 is Miguel Cotto. 9 fights, 7-2 record. He beat his biggest win was against Shane Mosley, which is a really big win. Also beat Zab Judah, and Claudia also. Lost to Margarito, lost to Pacquiao. Hall of Famer, one of the best fighters of his generation. He could be higher on my list, but I was just looking at his resume at 47, and it's obviously it's outstanding, but I just thought there were a few guys that were better. Yeah,
I'll get to Mr. Cotto in a second. So let's go to my number 7 is Sugar Shane Mosley. 2 huge wins at welterweight, one over Oscar De La Hoya and one over Antonio Margarito. Had short reigns as champion at 147, which drops him down a notch or two. Also had the close loss to Miguel Cotto, and of course the loss to Vernon Forrest. But Sugar Shane, number 7. Sorry.
Yeah. So Shane was on my long list. Shane did not make my top 10. He was 9. He was 9-6 as a welterweight.
As a welterweight, yeah.
Yeah.
Fought a lot of top guys though.
No. Listen, he was on my list for a reason. He's an all-time great Hall of Famer. He was a really good welterweight. Obviously, I was at the De La Hoya fight. That was a very close fight. That could have gone either way. The second fight was at 54, so that one doesn't count. And he got beat pretty bad by Forrest. Those were beatdowns. Anyway, mad respect for Shane, both as a boxer and as a person, but just didn't quite make my list. He's like at number 11.
All right, so who you got at number 7?
Number 7 is the aforementioned Timothy Bradley. 22 fights at 147, 19-2-1, according to my calculations. He beat some lower level guys early on, but then he also beat, moving down his list right now, Luis Abregu. He beat Pacquiao, even though I thought Pacquiao won that. He beat Provodnikov in that crazy ass brawl. He beat. This is a fight that people don't mention that often. He beat convincingly Juan Manuel Marquez, who's like, it was like an all-time great, and he beat him pretty convincingly.
Yeah, Jesse Vargas.
Beat Jesse Vargas and Brandon Rios. Those are all notable wins. Lost to Pacquiao and Pacquiao. So he lost to him twice, and he drew with Diego Chavez. So I agree with you 100%. Tough guy, really skillful guy who is a little bit underappreciated.
Yeah, certainly underappreciated. I remember watching him on Showbox when he first started off, and he fought, I believe his name was Manuel Garnica, and he dropped him. I mean, drove him across the ring with the right hand that he must have thrown about six inches away from. Garnica's jaw and the power and the leverage that he got on it just totally blew me away. And I thought, man, I got to watch this guy. And then, a couple years later, he beats Junior Witter for the 140-pound title, and then we know what he did at 147. Let's move on to number 6. I'll kick this one off, and my number 6 is a world champion today, Mr. Errol Spence Jr., who won the title against Kell Brook in a thrilling battle, dethroning Brook, and of course wins over Lamont Peterson, Mikey Garcia, Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, and who knows, maybe a win over Manny Pacquiao soon too.
So my number 6 is Errol Spence Jr. So we've landed in the same place with this one. 14 fights, 14-0. Obviously, he's undefeated. I don't have to go through the list. I don't know if you mentioned Algieri, who's another good win for him.
Yeah, another good win.
Yeah, and he's well, I don't know how long he's going to be at 47, but he probably still has a few more fights at 47. So I think his welterweight resume is only going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. If he continues to win and becomes undisputed, who knows how high he'll be on the list. Let's go to number 5. Mike, you can kick this one off. Who do you have?
Oscar De La Hoya.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, the guy's a Hall of Famer. I can't be that far off.
Yeah, you fought in other divisions. But yeah, you're
right. Well, he had 13 fights at welterweight. He was 10-3. Did beat Whitaker. I thought he won that fight, but it was an incredibly close fight. It could have gone either way. Beat Camacho, beat Wilfredo Rivera, Chavez. I know he was old. Corte, that was probably his, that or Vargas, which was at a different weight, or probably his best victories over Carr. You mentioned Arturo Gatti. He didn't lose to Trinidad. So, another thing I wanted to mention, I should have mentioned at the very beginning, is I'm not going to let like bad decisions cloud my rankings in this, and that's the worst decision of my career. Because
we've gone through that.
Yeah, I know we've got it. from my perspective,
the worst fight of my career.
It wasn't a great fight.
And I blame Oscar.
Yeah, I agree. Oscar fought him the way that he had to fight him to win the fight, and
we're using fought very loosely there.
And he did. Well, he was a boxer in that fight. Anyway, he did lose to Trinidad officially. He didn't really lose in the ring. We lost officially. Lost a really close fight to Mosley, and then the disaster against Pacquiao in his last fight that he either shouldn't have taken or he shouldn't have prepared the way he prepared. So that was a disaster. But listen, Oscar was a force at pretty much every weight. He had his disappointments. He didn't win some of his big fights, but he was a force at every weight that he fought in.
I think a force is the best way to put it. He was certainly a force at welterweight. My number 5 is Miguel Cotto, who you had a little lower on the list. Surprisingly, I liked his wins. I like his win over Judah. I love his win over Shane Mosley, and not to mention, Joshua Clottey, Octay Urcal, and Carlos Quintana, who holds a win over Paul Williams. Those are good victories in my eyes. He had some bad losses against some tough guys, Antonio Margarito and Manny Pacquiao, but I think Miguel Cotto did very well for himself at 147.
No, there's no doubt. He could probably be higher on my list, but this is where he landed. At the time I put it together. We should also mention one more thing, and this is total allegations, but people wonder, whether what was going on with Margarito's gloves in the first fight. I'm not making any accusations because I don't know, but I'm just telling you people wonder. So that clouds Margarito's first victory over Cotto.
Yeah, without question. All right, let's go to number 4. I'll kick this one off. My number 4 is Felix Tito Trinidad. Perhaps my favorite on this list, to be honest with you. I love watching this guy fight. I mean, boxer puncher with knockout power in both fists and always looking for the knockout, and a lot of good wins. He was the first one to beat Obakar, an undefeated Obakar stopped him, beat a 56-0 Yuri Boy Campus. Of course, the win over De La Hoya, which obviously he deserved. Pernell Whitaker. And the list goes on. And made 14, 15 defenses of his title at 147. 29 fights, Mike, which you shared with me, and he was 29-0, easily the best record out of anybody on this list. You could place him higher, but Felix Trinidad gets my vote here.
I did place him higher, so I'll talk.
Okay.
So I'll talk about him when I get to him.
Your number 4?
My number 4 is Emmanuel Pacquiao. 17 fights at 147 pounds, 13-4. He beat De La Hoya, he beat Cotto, beat Clottey, beat Mosley, beat Marquez, beat Brandon Rios, beat Tim Bradley twice, beat Algieri, beat Jesse Vargas, beat Lucas Matisse, Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman. That's a pretty damn impressive resume.
I'll say.
Could also be higher on my list. Lost to Bradley, although I didn't think he lost that fight. I scored that one for good fight, but I scored it for Pacquiao. Obviously, he got whacked out by Marquez in that one fight. Lost to Mayweather, clear decision. I thought there's no question about that. And I actually had him beating Horn. Horn got the decision. Competitive fight, but I thought Pacquiao won that fight. So, the thing about this, and then when we get to the top, the guys that except for Trinidad, the guys that we're going to have at the top, including Pacquiao, it's not even their best, not even close to their best division, yet they're at the top. Shows you how great these guys are. Yeah,
indeed. And that's a really, really good point. Who do you have? I'm not going to speak on Manny just yet. Who do you have for number 3?
Felix Trinidad. As you mentioned, 29-0. Now, again, in my mind, Oscar beat him in that fight. He didn't lose the fight, but 29-0 at welterweight. He basically passed every test that he had at the weight. That I actually wrote down the names of all these guys, but I think we mentioned enough of the names. You mentioned them earlier. The guy was an absolute force, crazy. I don't think he was the best boxer in the world, which is why I think that some guys were able to dominate him in that way. But crazy power. Like one of the biggest punchers of my entire career, and I've been doing this a long time. Really, really fun to watch, and also a really, really nice guy.
Yeah, and I feel like he was a better boxer at 147, particularly, during the earlier part of his reign than he was later. I feel it was actually an underrated aspect of his game when he got, toward the higher weights, particularly after the Vargas fight. It seemed to me like he fell in love with his power, and he wasn't as much of a mover as he once was, or as much of a jabber. But, for much of his reign at 147, he threw great feints. Good jab. He always, circled well and combinations went to the head and body. He was, he was just fantastic.
Shows you how good Oscar was then, because Oscar outboxed him for 9 rounds.
I don't think so. Oscar put us to sleep for.
But that's a different conversation, though. The fact is that he outboxed even on.
No, that's not a fact. He did not box him. He lost the decision. I didn't think he outboxed him.
No. He outboxed him for 9 rounds.
No, he didn't. I disagree with you. I thought he lost. I thought the first round could have gone either way. He absolutely lost the second round. He had a stretch of rounds in the middle rounds where he won, but then he started to fade, which he always does, and that culminated with him winning. The last round he won was the 9th round. It was also the round where he decided I can't do what I was doing before, and then he just decided to run and robbed everybody of what could have been a good fight. It was it was a unification bout. It was a huge match. I think it was a 1.4 million pay-per-view buys or something like that. And he totally ruined it. I mean, it's a fight that hardly anyone can watch again.
Everything you said is accurate except for the scoring. You're completely wrong. With due respect, you're completely wrong. There's no way in the world. I'm telling you, this isn't even in my mind. This isn't even debatable. There's no way you can find 7 rounds. I can't
believe we're gonna
There's
go
no
down,
way that we always will. There's no way that you can give 7 rounds to Trinidad in that fight. It did not happen. I mean, he did not win 7 rounds in that fight. It just didn't happen.
You're entitled to your opinion.
It didn't happen. I was there. I lived it. I was very close to that fight in those camps. It didn't happen.
I mean, that's certainly your opinion, but I thought he lost that fight. And I'm not the only one who thought he lost that fight. But I think more importantly, it's not a fight it's not like he wasn't robbed. If anything, he robbed everyone else.
Well, I think he was. We can move on after this. I think he was robbed. 100%, I think he was robbed, but he lost the right to complain. You lose the right to complain when you run for the final 3 rounds.
Robbed is when you lose. You win by 3-4 rounds. Robbed is not a close.
Well, I scored it. Actually, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm almost positive I scored it 16-14. So yeah, to me that was an absolute robbery. But again,
116 and 114.
I'm sorry, 160, 112. So in my mind, yeah, it was a robbery. But again, when you run the final 3 rounds, you sort of lose the right to complain. So that, yeah, a lot of the stuff you're saying was true. It wasn't an entertaining fight. That's not how you finish a fight. But when I was watching it, everybody around me was saying the same thing. They're saying this guy's making Trinidad look like a fool. He completely outboxed him.
I don't understand. And I'll close with this. If he was making Trinidad look like such a fool, then he should have kept doing that.
No. That's where you're right. You're not right.
And there's a reason why he didn't. And it's not because I've never seen a boxer run out the clock for 3-4 rounds. They might do it for a round, maybe 2 at most. But there's a reason why he decided to run out the clock that early, and that's because Trinidad's game plan was more effective than his, and he was slowing down and wearing down, and he had no choice but to run. Oscar knows what happened in that fight. But
I'm not. You're right about that. I'm not debating the last 3 rounds. I gave the last 3 rounds to Trinidad.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how we arrived there. But the
bottom line is you've got Trinidad higher on your welterweight list, and rightfully so.
Well, I do because I think he accomplished more at welterweight, but I don't think he won the fight. I don't think he won the fight though. As a matter of fact, I know he didn't win the fight. But let's move on.
He lost the fight actually.
We're gonna argue about something else. We're gonna argue about something else before we're finished here. So we might as well move on.
We're gonna argue about something else one day. My number 3 is Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. I assume he's higher on your list, and I could completely understand why. One of my favorite fighters looking back, but what can you say about Whitaker? The win over James Buddy McGirt, who was a top 5 pound for pounder. The win over Julio Cesar Chavez, I think no question he won that fight. The win over Oscar De La Hoya, I thought he won that fight as well. Diablos Hurtado, Wilfredo Rivera, all solid fights. Whitaker wasn't at his best at 147. You mentioned, most of these top guys on this list weren't, but certainly one of the greats there.
Actually, it's funny because the top guys we have, really the only one who was a natural welterweight was Trinidad. It's interesting. Yeah. I have Whitaker on my list, so we'll talk about Pernell when I get to him.
Okay. Well, let's move on then to number 2. I'll kick this one off, and mine is none other than Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. What a resume this man has. Shane Mosley, Juan Manuel Marquez. Of course, he also had that devastating defeat to Juan Manuel Marquez. I thought he beat Jeff Horn. The win over Miguel Cotto, Joshua Clottey, Lucas Matisse, Timothy Bradley, Jesse Vargas. The incredible win over Keith Thurman a couple years ago, Oscar De La Hoya, and on as far as Pacquiao, as deserving a name as any other, Mike.
Yeah, I said what I said. The thing that pops into my head is I'm just grateful for Manny Pacquiao. You only have certain fighters during your career as a boxing writer, and he's one of my 2 or 3 favorite of all time. So I'm really grateful for him. And for me, it's just so obvious how great he is. One of the all-time greats.
All right, Mike, who you got for number 2?
Okay, number 2 for me is a guy I feel is one of the best fighters of all time, Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. Pernell had 11 fights at 147. He was 8-2-1. His biggest wins were 2 of them over future Hall of Famer Buddy McGirt. He lost to De La Hoya, although a lot of people think he was screwed on that decision. A lot of people thought he won. And he also lost a decision to Trinidad later on. And he also drew with Julio Cesar Chavez, who many people believe Whitaker also won that fight. So probably not at his best. In fact, I'm sure he wasn't at his best at 147. As we said, a lot of these guys weren't at their best at 47, but he was still a damn good 147 pounder.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the best 147 pounders of the past 30 years. Obviously, you agree there. I got him at number 3, which means that we both have the same guy for number 1, right?
Yes, we do. Just to throw this out, I mean, I did consider Whitaker at number 1 because when I think of Whitaker and Mayweather, just in general, not just at welterweight, I think of them both as, well, all-time greats, first of all. But I also think that they're on the same level. Just, I don't know if interchangeable is the right word, but I think they're just on par with one another. So I thought about Whitaker at number 1, but I thought, no, Mayweather had 12 fights, 12-0. And he actually had a better resume at welterweight. I mean, Judah, Hatton, Marquez, Mosley, Ortiz, Guerrero, Maidana twice, Pacquiao, Berto. I mean, that's just a really, really strong. There's just no way you couldn't go with. You had to go with Mayweather.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, easily number 1 on my list, and most of the wins were dominant. Not just the fact that he beat these guys, but he beat a lot of them fairly handily during that time. Far and away the best fighter of that generation, and I think clearly the number 1 welterweight of that time.
Yeah, people were like reaching for fights to try to make fights competitive, like the first Maidana fight. Yeah, Maidana gave him some resistance, but it's not as if it was a really close fight. He was still a clear winner in that fight. So
right.
He actually had to reach to try to make some, 1 or 2 of these fights close. They just weren't. He just dominated everybody.
Yeah, which helped him pick up an extra check since everyone wanted to see it again against Maidana, and he went a little more clear in the rematch.
I thought that took a little balls, actually. I think that he knew he could do better, and he's like, okay, this guy gave me some resistance. Now I'm going to show you how I could dominate. I thought that took a little bit of balls.
Yeah, gave him an immediate rematch, so which speaks volumes, and no doubt we've seen a lot of praise regarding Mayweather over the past few days for what he did in the with working Tank Davis's corner on Saturday night. But no question, in the ring, he is in a class of his own. And with that, that's going to do it for this week's podcast. We want to thank Chris Colbert for joining us. And as a reminder, guys, Saturday night, Colbert returns to defend his WBA interim 130-pound title against Tugstogt Nyambayar. That's SHOWTIME beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk all about it next week, so stick around for more boxing talk right here on the PBC podcast.